Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Brilliant, I can see you all starting to come in. Welcome to this morning's webinar. I hope you are all keeping safe and well. Great to have you with us this morning. My name is Fania Stoney, and I know while most of you have been on many of our webinars at this stage, I am a consultant here in Great Place to Work, and I'll be hosting today's session. Like we usually do, if a few people could pop on the chat, make sure you can see our holding screen, that you can hear me clearly. It'd be really great to make sure that's all working for you at home. I know I do the bi-weekly weather update, but I mean, it's a bit depressing this morning, to be honest. It's another wet, cold morning in July, so I think we will just move on from that. Great, good morning Anthony, good morning Claire, thanks so much guys, great to hear you can hear us. Okay, so welcome to the next installment of our Trust Insight series, and today we're going to be looking at activating your achievement, engaging, retaining and attracting talent. It is a bit bizarre to think that back in January we had this event physically in the Odeon, where we could all handshake and hug. I know my colleague Cathal is a little bit delighted we can't do the hugs anymore, but we do miss the handshakes. Yeah, we're kind of delighted to welcome back Andrew from Abbey, who was speaking at that session, and we've also got Joanne here today from Esri Ireland. Cahill's going to be doing the formal intros shortly. A couple of little things that we're going to do slightly different today. It is a branded webinar, and you can see our two hashtags are up on the screen there, hashtag Great Place to Work Events, hashtag GTW Webinar. And we actually have a branded swag bag. I know those of you with the Odeon have one already, but any new people, we have a little branded swag bag with a notebook and a keep cup and that kind of stuff to give away. So please do share some posts out on social, pop on and use those hashtags, and then we'll be selecting somebody tomorrow to send out that branded swag bag too. So that's kind of a nice thing to be able to give away today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We will be wrapped up within the hour. The recording will be available. We'll have kind of slides, and Joanne's link will be available afterwards. We've also got an updated Activating Your Achievement pack, given this kind of digital world that we're now in. And Marina's been working on that, so we'll share all of that with you afterwards. And please do keep the questions coming throughout this session, so you can pop them into our chat function, onto the Q&A, and we'll be looking at those throughout the session, and then in a dedicated Q&A at the end. Our next webinar is going to be on Thursday, July 23rd. That's going to be at 10 a.m. So keep an eye out for the invite coming for that soon. That'll be the next one in our Trust Insight series. Right, without further ado, I am going to hand over to Cathal Dibley to get us started. So Cathal, over to you.
Thanks very much, Fania. Good morning, everyone. Hope we're all well. Hope everyone is safe wherever you are in the country. So I think, look, again, this morning is a great demonstration of what we mean when we talk about the Great Place to Work community. So we have two great workplaces who are on the call this morning, happy to share their insights from their journey. And this morning with the content, we're looking to kind of take a slight pivot. So a lot of our webinars so far have been, you know, really into the culture piece and leadership and how you build trust. And this morning we're kind of looking at the connection between culture and branding, and the connection between your internal culture and your external branding. And when I think about this idea of the branding element, I think there's two useful concepts, I guess, or definitions I like to think about. So the first is your IEB, which is your internal employer brand. So not only how do we build a strong culture, but how do we then storytell that culture for our existing talent that we have? And how do we create almost an emotional connection between our internal talent, our existing talent, and what we're trying to do in terms of our employer brand. And then you have your EEB, which is your external employer brand. And that's all about how we front up in the marketplace to help us attract the talent that we're looking to attract. And obviously the best employer brands are built from the inside out almost. So they're authentic. What they say externally about what they do matches up with the reality of the internal culture. And Fania, just on a loop there, we have some slides that we're showing, which is really just we've done a bit of work to kind of look at how many of the organizations on the call and Great Place to Work clients are currently using and promoting the brand, which is great to great to see. And during COVID times, we've seen a lot of employee advocacy, which is great, which is employees who are bought into the culture internally, who believe they're part of a great team, are more than happy to kind of share with the external market their experience. And I think a key piece to your internal culture and your external brand is the idea of storytelling. So it's really important that we can storytell our internal culture and storytell for the external market as well. So we hope to spark some insights, some ideas that you can take back to your virtual workplace or your actual workplace, wherever that may be, and get some ideas that you can kind of move forward and move your organization forward. So delighted. First up, we have Joanne McLaughlin from Esri Ireland. Joanne is head of marketing for Esri Ireland. She's lots of marketing experience, and she helped craft their strategy towards 2025, which was the corporate strategy for growth. And Esri Ireland is a great example of an organization that has focused on their culture while they've focused on their business strategy. And for Joanne, finding meaning and purpose in work is key to a fulfilled career. And the cool thing is Joanne is going to actually use some of the technology that Esri Ireland use as a business to kind of storytell through her presentation today. And you can see the importance of the mapping element to that technology. And as somebody who spends his life falling out with sat-navs, getting lost around the country, I'm excited to not only hear Joanne's presentation, but see it in action as well. So as Fania said, we want this as much to be a conversation. I see everyone as participants, so please leave your comments, suggestions, your thoughts, and we'll try and make it as much of a two-way conversation as possible. Joanne, thanks very much for joining us. Delighted to hand over to you.
Great stuff. Okay, guys, I'm just going to share my screen and hope that works.
Yeah, brilliant.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much, Cathal and Fania, for the introduction. So, as the guy said, my name is Joanne McLaughlin and I head up the marketing function at Esri Ireland. I think for those of you who don't know who Esri Ireland are, we're the Environmental Systems Research Institute. So we're not the Economic and Social Research Institute, which is a marketing challenge in and of itself, having the same acronym. What we do is we help organizations solve business problems by understanding the impact of geography on their business operations. And basically, we have a mapping and technology platform called ArcGIS, and it's all about geographic information systems. So what does that actually mean? I guess it means we're in the location technology and location intelligence business. That's the short version. And even though you might have heard about us before, I'm sure you've interacted with our services through the work of our customers, even in the last few weeks. If you've had a shower this morning, or if you boiled a kettle to make a cup of coffee, you would have interacted with our services. We work with Irish Water and Northern Ireland Water on the island of Ireland to help them map and manage and survey their water utility network and their assets. If you've ever been into Starbucks or had a takeaway coffee from them, for example, we work with Starbucks over in the States to help them understand where to open up their next stores based on potentially where their current and future customers are. And I think if you've been on media at all during the last couple of months, you will have seen the Johns Hopkins University dashboard, and it's all of our technology that sits behind that, along with obviously authoritative data from the World Health Organization to show the mapping of coronavirus across the globe. So even though you might have heard of us before, you will have interacted with our services. So I guess we're all about solving the where part of the business problem, and we encapsulate that in the phrase, the science of where, and that sort of umbrella is exactly what we do. In terms of who we are globally, we are operating in 80 different countries. We have 10,000 employees worldwide, and our HQ is in Redlands in California, founded in 1969. And in terms of what we do here on the island of Ireland, we have two offices, one in Dublin and one in Hollywood County, Bangor, Northern Ireland, and also we have 59 full-time employees. So that's kind of the short version of who we are and what we do. In terms of my role within the Great Place to Work team at Esri Ireland, so I work in the Great Place to Work team with two of my colleagues, Andrew Ray and Marie Hogan, along with our Managing Director, Paul Sinnott. And I guess we always believed that Esri Ireland was a great place to work, but we wanted to get some really hard evidence and data to support that theory, and also to find and identify places where we might need to improve our business, our culture, our employee engagement. So we started working with the Great Place to Work team back in 2016 when we met Breen Sutton, who came in and told us all about it. And that was really the beginning of our Great Place to Work journey from there. And since then, we have moved up the rankings from 13th place in 2017 to 6th place the year after, second, and then this year we were awarded Best Workplace in the small category. And that's something we're really, really proud of, but also very humble about. We know there's always areas for improvement. And for us, I guess, Great Place to Work is less about the ranking and more about the framework that it gives us for managing organizational change and helping to build a high trust culture where employees are achieving their best and, you know, happy doing it. So Fania and Cathal have said I have 15 minutes to cover off all of the things that we've been doing. So I guess that focuses the mind. And I guess from my point of view, I'd like to hone in on 3 specific areas around activating the achievement, particularly around attracting, engaging and retaining talent. So the first thing I want to talk about is our brand, the Great Place to Work brand, and how we leverage that to attract and engage. The second thing we'll go on to talk about then is our celebration practice, and there's a reason why I've honed in on that particular practice out of the 9 that we work with through the Great Place to Work framework, and that's really for us all about engaging and retaining our talent. And then I'll wrap up by covering a little bit about what I've learned over the last few months in particular, and sort of where our head's at in terms of where we go to next with all of this, and how we sort of implement some of the learning that we've had since everybody's been working from home. So let's talk about the Great Place to Work brand. From our perspective, I guess we filter everything through like what problem is Great Place to Work solving for us, and what problem does the Great Place to Work brand help us to solve and achieve results. So for me, really, it's quite simple. There's a few like really key areas that makes a Great Place to Work brand very invaluable to us as a business. So I guess first things first, we're competing for talent against some of the major tech brands globally that are based in Dublin. So, I mean, that's a challenge by itself. And we're also competing for talent with other big business brands who might be more well known than we are. Secondly, we have a very small team. Well, we have a small team of 59 people, but within that, our marketing team consists of myself and my colleague, Ellen Scully. So we have a small team and we have a very modest budget, but that doesn't stop us wanting to achieve and trying to find innovative ways to do that. And the Great Place to Work brand helps us do that by extending our reach and amplifying our voice to a much wider community that we'd be able to do by ourselves with the resources we have and with the money we have to spend. So that's very important to us. In terms of talent acquisition, we tend to look at talent across the whole talent journey. So attracting people, engaging them, retaining them is very important, obviously, because we want people to stay when they get here. And it's about talent experience as well. So if people come and work here and they decide in a few years they want to leave, we want to make sure that they act as Great Place to Work ambassadors when they go on to their next role as well. But obviously our main aim is to keep people here, keep people engaged and keep developing them. And then finally, I guess the Great Place to Work brand helps build our own brand personality because we believe we're so much more than just a tech organization. So through the Great Place to Work brand, we're able to build and profile our practice areas and also, I guess, to profile our people and give them kudos for the really hard work that they do day in and day out. Okay, so I thought it'd be useful to share some of the ways that we activate our achievement and how we've been doing it, not just since we got Best Workplace for the small category, but over the last few years. And I guess one point I'd like to draw out is, for us, Great Place to Work and the brand is so much more than just a logo. It's integrated into our thinking, into our strategy, into everything that we do as business. So I guess the first thing that I'd like to hone in on is our physical space. So when we started to work with Great Place to Work in 2016, we were in an office that was quite dated. It hadn't been, I suppose, done up in quite a few years, a couple of decades, in fact. And we really didn't feel like it aligned with our brand values, and being, a cutting edge technology company. Dynamic organization, great people, and we just didn't feel like our physical space matched our brand values. So using the evidence from Great Place to Work and the feedback that we'd gotten from employees, lots of people said, the office could do with a refurb and a facelift, and obviously that's not something that you can do lightly. So we spent 6-7 months building a business case, presenting that to the owners of our business, and getting it signed off. And what that did was, it really forced the issue of trust for us, because the business case was signed off, and our whole company worked from home for 12 weeks back in 2017, while our office was gutted and refurbished to be much more open spaced, so to take down sort of walls and offices and keep us all together as a group. And I think that's really worked well for us, because now the Great Place to Work brand aligns with our own brand and aligns with who we are as a business. So we've got touch points all over the office, from the Great Place to Work awards that we won for being a great team and our speaking practices. We have our certificates just to my left here as I'm sitting in the office, and we've got branding banners, suggestion boxes. We've even got supplies in the gents and the ladies toilet area, branded with Great Place to Work all over it. So it's basically everywhere you look in our office, and that's really important that our physical space matches who we are and what we do. The awards night that happens in February is the start of our comms plan for the year, and all of our Great Place to Work messaging through our comms starts with awards night. And that's a really important night in our calendar, because it gives us a voice to show that we are going along, and that we've been ranked, and that we're still considered a really exciting place to be. In terms of our PR, we have a PR agency that we use, Common Communications, and they've been great helping us with amplifying our voice out into the wider press. So while we wouldn't have the budgets to sort of advertise in some of the big publications, what we do is we create a PR around the time of the awards, and we issue that out to complement what's happening in the press that Great Place to Work are doing. We also, on all of our PR clippings and publications, we include a boilerplate about being a great place to work. So we're not only building awareness out into the market, but we're actually building relationships with journalists so that we're front of mind with them as well. A really cool tool that we've started to use this year, and since COVID started, is the Great Place to Work portal page. So that's been very useful for us. It's because we can push a lot of our social media content and drive traffic to that page. So this is basically a microsite that's hosted on the Great Place to Work Ireland website. And it's a place, as I said, where we can put call to actions from our social media towards, and it gives people a really nice insight into who we are and what we do. For anybody out there who's a small business and wants to use this, I'd really suggest checking it out, because you've got all of the content there if you've been certified or if you've done a culture audit. So it's really about sort of slicing and dicing that and using it to your advantage. And there's links in this presentation that you can have a look at our presence there as well. And we use that to advertise information about our jobs, to profile our head of professional services and his insight about how we develop people when they come in and work for us. We also use it as part of our induction process, and it also helps to build this whole ethos of brand personality. So we have insights from our managing director, Paul Sinnott, and we'll have insights from the team. And, you know, that's a really cool way to profile our people, but also to give insights as to the type of people that work here, the demographic, and the level of experience. When we talk about activating our achievements, social is key, because as I said, we are a small team of 2 and we have, you know, a modest budget. So channels like Instagram and Instagram stories have been a really exciting platform for us to experiment with. Also, we're very active on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. So we have content around Great Place to Work that we push out all the time. So we're very strategic and consistent about those stories. And as Cathal said, storytelling about our people and about our practices is key. We also use simple things like our email signatures in terms of all of the logos that we use that says we're a great place to work. We leverage our global channels as well as our local channels, and we've become known as subject matter experts in this whole area of, you know, high trust workplaces because of that. We also use our own technology to market ourselves. So this slide deck that I'm using now is called a story map. So we really try and use all of the digital tools that we have available to us to broaden our reach. And then I guess in terms of brand, one piece of advice I think is really important is to leverage the Great Place to Work network. Like we've learned a lot from listening to the webinars over the last few months, from going to physical events when we could, and actually just immersing ourselves in the whole community of like-minded workplace, whether you're small, medium or large. And we also share content from the Great Place to Work community to our own network. So it's this sort of flow that's a 360 communications view that gives people a real sense of, you know, what we're all about. And then obviously forums like today are really important. So we would put our hand ups for speaking opportunities so people can get to know us a little bit better. And one project that we did with Great Place to Work that we actually got great traction from was the Bus Back campaign. So I guess in a nutshell, when you think about activating our achievement through brand, a couple of takeaways from my point of view. Digital is so important for us because it's measurable and it's very cost effective. Another piece of advice would be to have a structure around your content calendar. So, you know, to be consistent, to make sure that you're telling stories, but that they're current, and that they don't just happen after the night of the awards and then, you know, fall into a black hole. I've mentioned harnessing the Great Place to Work network and the amount of like really deep learning you can get from listening to other people's experiences. And then when we're activating brand around talent management, we're positioning around a couple of key things, which is career meaning, purpose, and obviously growth, because people need to develop and feel like they're actually achieving in their roles. So I'll move on to what I want to talk about next in terms of our celebratory practice. So the reason I honed in on celebration as a practice was because we've got a pretty good handle on how we manage all of the different 9 practice areas. But one area of practice that sort of screamed feedback to us back in 2016 was around celebrating. And if I was to encapsulate that in a nutshell, I would probably say there was the lack of crack in the office, and I know that's just not from me. That was like from all of our employees that participated in the trust survey. And I remember getting feedback from the Great Place to Work guys at the time, and who encapsulated it quite well with that phraseology. It doesn't mean that we're not good crack. It just means that everybody's very focused on what they're doing, and sometimes we forget to actually stand back. So you know, we currently have 59 employees, lots of different nationalities, 12 in fact, which is quite high considering the size of our organization. And we've also got people of very diverse tenure. So there's people who've been here since 2000, and then people who have literally joined a couple of weeks ago. So when you look at our Great Place to Work data, which kind of drives our action planning, one of the statements that really sort of resonates with us is that in terms of discretionary effort, people here really go over and above in terms of what they want to do to get the job done. So we scored 98% there. So the whole, I suppose, output of that is that we've got a very engaged, high achieving, results driven team. And as I said, sometimes we actually forget to just take time to recognize and reward and celebrate our achievements. And I guess that's partly because we don't like to rest on our laurels, and that's what makes us successful. But I think it's also very important to have purposeful celebration. So in terms of how we frame that, we look at it in terms of what are the things that we can do that's going to have the most impact from a people perspective and also from a business perspective. So I thought it'd be useful to share maybe some of the things that we've been doing since everyone has been working from home. So I guess the first thing that we did this year was to create a Microsoft Teams channel. So we use that to cascade information out about all of the things that we're doing. And since we've been working remotely, that's been very useful to make sure we've been communicating two-way with our team. In terms of engagement, like one of our guys created a webisode series about a fictional character, which provided great fun and crack for people while we're working from home. So that sort of shows the level of engagement we have with people, that they're willing to just do that off the bat. Another thing that we did, obviously with COVID happening very early in March, we didn't get a chance to celebrate as a whole team. The fact that we had done so well this year in terms of being recognised for a 4th year in a row. So we wanted to get our team together for a virtual celebration. So what we decided to do was to have a Friday night takeaway event where everybody could order their favorite takeout. We involved anyone who they were living with, so families, friends, flatmates could get involved, and also have a tipple of their choice, whatever they wanted. And we also asked them to take a photograph of their experience and share that with us. So not only did we sort of engage people in terms of celebrating, but we also felt like we were helping support local businesses. And we created, a really nice digital asset, a story map to show where people ordered from, what was the most popular takeaway, and then pictures of people been enjoying their food with their family. So it was just a really nice piece of digital content that we shared out over social media, that proved really popular, again, because it's about telling a story about the type of organization that we are. We've also had a Friday afternoon jukebox session with a live session singer through YouTube live stream, and you'll see a picture of Porrick Daigan there, who we're actually going to have another session with tomorrow. So the whole idea here is to finish up work early on a Friday, dial, or basically access Porrick's live session through YouTube link. We get to play requests based on his list of songs, and comment while we're doing it, and it's actually been really good fun, so we decided to do it again tomorrow. And again, a really simple way to celebrate with everybody and see what's going on in the comments. And I guess it's just an opportunity for people to kick back and relax, because people are working very hard at the moment as well. As I said previously, we use our own apps to share stories about our team. So we also created a digital story map at the beginning of lockdown to connect with each other and, to share pictures about what was going on for people, whether it was homeschooling, recipes, baking, exercise regimes. And again, we were able to share that over social and broaden our reach. I think a very simple practice that we've gotten into doing was suggested by Andrew, one of the Great Place to Work team, and this was a virtual thank you day. So what we did was just decided that twice a year we would do a raffle and give away prizes as a simple way of saying thank you for all of the effort that people put in. And we do that twice a year. Once is on Blue Monday, which is happening every January, supposedly the most depressing day of the year after Christmas and before payday. And then we have our Midsummer Thank You Day happening tomorrow. So we have prizes ranging from meals out, one for all vouchers. We do hotel giveaways, flights abroad, which obviously can't happen now, but we've come up with a list of sort of innovative prizes to give away tomorrow. And again, that's just a really simple way of saying thank you and celebrating all of the effort that people put in. And each summer, we also have a Great Place to Work annual celebration day, which we'll be doing virtually tomorrow. And again, that's a way to recognise all of the graphs that we do and areas that we need to improve upon. So again, very simple and very easy to convert from a physical event to a virtual event. So what else we've been doing? Yeah, looking at both physical and mental wellness, both through our comms and through sort of targeted webinars to make sure that we connect with people and make sure that they're doing okay, because obviously you don't get the physical contact and the face-to-face contact in work. So things like our employee advantage program through VHI, their squad goals, exercise program that you could opt in and out of. So, you know, ways that we can connect both in terms of physical and mental health, really important. And then you'll see a whole list of things here, I'm conscious of time, that we do to help celebrate. So one of those things that we created was called our Esri-versary breakfast with the boss. So depending on what month you join the company, you could go and have breakfast with our MD and she the code about all sorts of everything. And again, just a really simple way of engaging everybody in the business with our managing director. He's very hands-on anyway, so simple things that kind of go a long way to make sure people feel valued. So if I was to sum up in terms of what we've been doing around virtual celebrating, I think the main takeaway here is, you know, look at the stats and try and see how our efforts have been reflected in the numbers, and the fact that we've been making a really conscious effort to celebrate more proactively. So if you look at 2016, we rated at 35% to the statement that people celebrate special events around here. So we've jumped up 43 percentage points there to 78 in 2019. And in terms of, you know, crack at work and having some fun and downtime, we've moved from 60% up to 76%. So we still have a lot of work to do, and we're not saying that we have it cracked, but we've certainly put more of a strategic intent on it, and we can see from the trust survey that people feel like that's paying off. And I guess another point in terms of wrapping up our whole ethos around celebration is that we need to be mindful that we engage all sorts and all levels across the business, but also all lengths of tenure. So we're not just speaking to maybe new recruits and forgetting about people who've been here a while, but that we cover the whole gamut of tenureship within Esri Ireland. So I'll wrap up by saying, you know, a few things that we are learning and have learned along the way, that in terms of our great place to work journey, everything needs to tie back into our business performance. Just because it's a great place to work doesn't mean it's an easy place to work. It has to really be tied into how profitable we are as a business, because otherwise how are we going to continue to invest in our practices and make sure that we continue to make it, you know, a really enjoyable place to be. So like we set out with a business strategy in 2015 to be a 10 euro million business by the end of 2020. I've no doubt in my mind that the reason we achieved that a year ahead of target was to do with how we approach trust in our business and our great place to work mindset. We've also moved to a trust-based performance appraisal process. So trust is really at the core of everything we do, and that's all about us establishing Esri Ireland as a place where there's distributed leadership and leadership at all levels of the business. So trust is very, very important. Another piece of advice is, you know, look at your great place to work trust survey data and really get under the hood of it. Take time to understand that and take time to understand people's experiences, particularly during, you know, what's been happening over the last few months. And although there's themes that have bubbled up in terms of people's experiences from working from home, it's really important to take the time to talk to people and find out what their unique experiences have been. Boundary setting is very important, because we know that people give a huge amount of discretionary effort, so we have to be mindful of that. And we also know from talking to people that, you know, the sense of community is still really key for us to make sure that we're, you know, connected as a group, and that communication is ongoing throughout our virtual working from home environment. So where do we go to next? I think for us, it's about scale. So how do we now look at scaling up our team of 3 to involve more practice champions to drive what we want to do next? I think the listening organization is going to be more important than ever. So how we listen to people. And I also think how the virtual environment coexists with the physical face-to-face environment is going to be really interesting in how we approach our next few years of great place to work and what we do. And for me, it's going to be about blend. So, you know, not having one and not another, but actually how they coexist beside each other. So to wrap up, I guess what I wanted to say was, you know, our great place to work journey is only just beginning, and you know, we've got a lot of work to do, but really excited about where we go to next. And yeah, that's how I'd like to finish. Thanks, Fania.
Oh, Joe, thank you so much. So I know Carl's going to do the intros, but I think just one thing to say that strikes me is you kind of make it seem, sure, this is all pretty straightforward, you just do this and this, but we know there's a huge amount of work that you guys are putting in to do all that you do. And not only do you take that, you know, that slice of the data that you get on an annual basis, but you're checking in all the time, and that crucial check-in with employees, exemplified by tomorrow, right? So tomorrow is your kind of your mid-year, how's everybody getting on, what's working, what's not working. So you say you don't rest on your laurels, and I think that really comes through. You're not taking any of this for granted. So thank you so much, Joe, for that. Cathal, we'll hand back over to you.
Thanks, Fania. Thank you, Joanne. Lots of ideas there for people to take away. I mean, it's just really evident that the commitment and the intent you have around improving your culture, and how you create that emotional connection with your employees, which is obviously really useful from an external point of view as well. Mm-hmm. So really appreciate that, Joanne. Thanks. I have a couple of questions. Might keep it to the end, maybe if we have time. But thanks very much for that. So next up we have Andrew Shaw from who's communications manager of AbbVie. And he is responsible for internal and external communications. Supports the AbbVie sites across Ireland on all Great Place to Work activities. And back when we were physically allowed to meet people in, I think it was January, Andrew came along and spoke at another one of our clients, an event we held with a client, the Odeon Cinema, and we had a really good event around branding in the morning time, where we ate popcorn at, I think, in the morning. We've no popcorn today, unfortunately. Yeah. Unfortunately, Andrew. But Andrew, listen, really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot for joining us, and delighted to hand over to you.
No worries at all. Yeah, I wouldn't mind a little bit of popcorn and a little bit of a change of environment. And unfortunately, it's beginning to sort of brighten up a little bit sort of outside. So hopefully, we're sort of careering towards a little bit of sun this weekend. So thanks again, guys, for the opportunity to speak today. And to Joanne there, to some really sort of useful sort of insights. I've been sort of taking a few little sort of notes there myself, so really appreciate your contribution there. What I would like to do, just to, even before I sort of get into talking about sort of how AbbVie has sort of activated our achievement both internally and externally, is just to kind of even talk about a little bit my sort of even sort of journey in joining sort of AbbVie. So sort of 5 years ago, I sort of joined AbbVie, and one of the first cross-site sort of projects that I would have worked on was Great Place to Work, and that was sort of working with sort of colleagues at our sites in Sligo, sort of Cork and Dublin, in terms of the development of our sort of culture audit. And then sort of following that, I was sort of lucky enough to sort of go to my first sort of Great Place to Work awards. I was kind of blown away by the theatre. I was basically, I've said to everybody within the companies, like, if you go to any awards, go to the Great Place to Work awards. It is, it's like going to a concert, carnival, awards. They said it was a fantastic sort of night. And again, I think, you know, in terms of an organization, you sort of exemplify, you know, what it means to sort of be able to celebrate and to showcase development and people and leadership and trust. So I think it was a great sort of eye opener for me in terms of what, you know, companies can achieve. And again, in terms of sort of learning from other people sort of on the night. But again, you know, for me, it sort of began this sort of the journey in terms of sort of understanding the sort of our organization and the importance of sort of culture as well. Another thing I sort of just wanted to point out was the fact, for me anyways, the whole sort of universality of the Great Place to Work sort of brand. You know, you've got a really sort of potent and powerful sort of brand. For me, I kind of call it almost a kind of Ron seal. It does what it says in the tin. It's simply great coffee. When someone says, you know, that you're a great place to work, you're communicating in like 1 second, you know, sort of a glimpse into a company that employees want to work in or work for, good collegiality, you know, there's trust, and you know that's externally, you know, for be it a customer or as a stakeholder, politician, you know, they get an understanding of what you're about. You know, it's like the guaranteed Irish sort of logo if I see it on a product as well. So I think that's incredibly sort of useful. But before I sort of even sort of go into, like Joanne did as well, just a little bit of a sort of understanding our company, because I'm sure some people have never heard of sort of AbbVie before. So AbbVie is a sort of a global biopharmaceutical company. We're sort of headquartered out in Chicago. And so the next bit is sort of interesting as well for me is that the company was formed in 2013 following a split from Abbott. So you went from a very well-known sort of company, particularly in Ireland, into an unknown. But it also gave an opportunity sort of to create a new sort of culture, building on the culture that was developed with sort of Abbott, and into year on year to try and sort of foster that sort of culture. And sort of AbbVie has a significant sort of presence in Ireland. Up until a couple of months ago, we would have had 5 sites in Ireland, and we would have sort of grown from 2013 to 2019 from 400 employees to 800. So we would have doubled the amount of sort of employees that we have within Ireland. And obviously that there is people who are sort of coming and going, people who are retiring, new graduates, etc. So there's an awful lot of new people who are sort of coming into the company. And as Joanna and sort of Colin have already pointed out, you can't rest on your laurels. You have to continuously sort of, communicate with your sort of employees. They have to sort of know and understand, why culture is important and feel a part of it. And, it has to be, employee driven, sort of both sort of, from ground upwards and trickling down from leaders as well. And over the last sort of number of months, we would have acquired Allergan. So again, we're sort of building the presence in Ireland, and we will be going from a kind of approximately 800 to 2,500 people within sort of Ireland. But for the purposes today, I'm going to be sort of focusing on our legacy sites and the journey over the last sort of number of years. I think it's also sort of useful and important to sort of point out the dynamic of our business. Not everybody is going to be working from their bedroom in our organization. We've got an awful lot of people who are sort of, continue to work on site and working right through sort of COVID. We've got people who are obviously just sort of working from home. We've got an operations sort of commercial split. So we've got people who are lab analysts. We've got people who work in production. We've got people who are working on groundbreaking, new sort of oncology sort of therapeutics. We've got people who are in field. We've got a diverse company with a huge amount of nationalities, age groups, and tenureships as well. And we're a 24/7, 365 business. So we've got people who are working on shifts. So again, when you're devising sort of culture, when you're sort of looking to leverage your recognition or build sort of culture, you have to sort of be aware of these sort of dynamics and how you reach out to people and bring people along. But I think one of the interesting things for me about the Great Place to Work and also our own sort of unique sort of company culture is there is a halo effect to a certain degree. If you look at the practice areas for sort of Great Place to Work, you're looking at, how to celebrate development, how you hire and welcome people. There's, our CSR, how we build relationships, trust within our communities. And that really reflects what we are as a company. So there's no jarring. There's no they're not rubbing against each other. They're completely complementary. And another thing for me, which for someone who's based in Dublin, who's the communications sort of manager and working with all our various different sites in Ireland, it's all site participation. And that's really, really important for us. Everybody contributes. We have, some fantastic sort of Great Place to Work ambassadors. We've got culture ambassadors, our sports and social teams, our, CR teams. So everybody gets involved, and it's very employee owned. It's not, and I know, and this is even from the audience today, sometimes there would be barriers because people might feel like it's a HR driven or it's communications driven or marketing. We've really made a big effort to sort of include everybody in the process and make them sort of feel part of the sort of the Great Place to Work sort of journey. And as you can see, our journey sort of started at sort of 16th and 12th and then 331, and in the top 3 for the last number of years. And again, as you sort of mentioned, we do not rest in our laurels. Part of the ethos in our company is always raise the bar. We just don't sit back. The second you start sitting back, and not making an effort, you're going to slide sort of backwards. And obviously a ranking is a useful barometer. And I think the actual sort of information that we get back from Great Place to Work is incredibly powerful and useful as well. As Joanne sort of pointed out, you can begin to pinpoint sort of areas where you may be sort of sliding. Or you may have taken all the eye off the ball, or else, what happens is that, companies change, new people sort of come in, their expectation changes. What was fantastic 3 years ago is, au fait, or, you know, our environment is changing as well with COVID. So the way we sort of communicate, how we work from home, and the expectation of our employees and colleagues completely sort of changes. So you're constantly going back to the drawing board. And another thing, you know, from a great place to work sort of perspective, is you always talk with variety, you know, keep changing, sort of change things up, be unique, be different. And again, as Joanne sort of pointed out in terms of the network, you know, we've got an expression called steal with pride. So it's okay to take other people's ideas. This is the whole sort of part. You know, there are thousands and thousands of sort of companies within Ireland, and obviously the amount of people who sort of participate is a great place to work. We're all learning from each other. You know, we're all kind of like on the shoulders of giants, trying to sort of help each other out. I think today and these types of events are sort of great to give those tidbits. And you know, I realize I'm not going to, you know, you're not going to sort of, you know, log off today and go, oh my God, I've, you know, a million things that I've learned. Hopefully you can sort of take a few little sort of hints and tips that one, that you might go, yeah, we're doing that already. That's great. I can sort of feel good about it, that there's not a million things that I'm not doing, but equally, what can I do tomorrow? What can I do next week? How can I weave in the sort of the brand activation on a project that I'm working on already? And then I can basically shoehorn it in without it looking shoehorned in. So without further ado, I'll sort of move on to sort of how we sort of look to sort of integrate, or sorry, to sort of activate internally, and then I'll move into sort of externally. And just even in the first sort of visual there, and we talk about celebrating. I think celebration is really sort of important because, you know, in terms of celebrating an achievement, it's a useful sort of opportunity and a platform to thank. You know, thank everybody. You know, you don't get to number 1 or 16, you don't get accredited, you don't come in at 25, regardless. And this is an important point to make as well. It's not only about the ranking, you know, and it's easy for me to say, and I understand that you know, the fact that we're sort of, you know, number 1, it's so easy to say that. However, to actually make it and be accredited is a huge achievement, and it can take years. And I understand that you may have to have hundreds of conversations with, you know, senior management to get the buy-in to do something like that. So even to actually get accredited, to get ranked, to get to the top 3, 5, or actually to even sort of progress, but equally to slide back and then to sort of come back as well is something that needs to be applauded. And again, as I said, it's not just a HR team or a PR team or a marketing team or a leadership team that does that. That's everybody. And I think it's to use those sort of celebrations to actually thank people and thank, you know, our sports and social team or whatever. But equally, I think it's a useful sort of opportunity just to even sort of point out, you know, what we've done last year in development, and even to sort of talk about, like, you know, the amount of percentage points that we've increased and improved, and that's thanks to X amount of teams, you know. So I think it's a very useful sort of opportunity. You'll see in the photograph there, you know, how sort of culinary habits and tastes have changed. Back in 2014, it was a mega huge, big, great place to work cake. We've obviously evolved into cronuts, donuts, cupcakes. I don't know, maybe with COVID and stuff like that, we'll be sending a sort of scone mix and sort of encouraging people to make their own stuff as well. But again, it's just to try and get people together to gather and to thank people. And that can be done, you know, the day after. And as Joanna talked about, it's like what you do the day after the actual sort of awards. And, you know, for me, it's year round. You're continuously doing this, but obviously try to sort of, you know, use occasions and to sort of thank people and to talk about the progress that was made. And again, you know, they're done sort of differently at different sites, and there's no, you know, one size fits all. And obviously with us, we've been having, you know, 5 different sites, you know, that there may be certain, you know, ways that people like, you know, they like to do sort of breakfast, or it's afternoons, or it's lunches. There's a nice sort of photograph of 2 of my colleagues there, Maita and Michelle. You may recognize the selfie frame, which I stole from the event. If you're wondering where that piece.
Sorry, stealing with pride is becoming a bit of a theme now. So
pride. I used it, so it didn't end up in the back of a taxi where it may have. I brought it into work the next day, and I got people to sort of jump into a few sort of selfies. And again, our sort of photographs were used internally. And I don't know if you can see, and it'll be in my next slide as well, the 2 individuals, the 2 girls there, sort of Maita and Michelle, were also sort of participated and sort of featured in one of our Great Place to Work adverts. And it was just a nice thing for me to kind of get the girls to sort of jump into the frame with the ad, which appeared the next day. So basically the great sort of supplement that Great Place to Work do, we had our ad, and obviously it was important for us to have our employees sort of feature in that. And they sort of jumped into those sort of photographs as well. So, you know, they're only little small things. And I think, you know, and a lot of people sort of realize and recognize this, you know, sometimes it's the really small little sort of gestures, the little sort of small things that you will sort of do throughout the year to actually sort of weave in the brand is just as powerful as a one-time off thing of doing it. So for me, it's this kind of a focus on year round. Again, when I talk about sort of the next day, I move on to the next sort of piece here as well, is to communicate. You know, not everybody will make it to a celebration. Not everybody will be aware of it. You know, some people will be just sort of focused on what they're doing. But again, it's to try and sort of use every kind of touch point that you have internally, you know, your intranet, to sort of communicate, you know, your Great Place to Work achievement. And again, you may actually, maybe for the next day, it might be bite-sized chunks, you know, just basically telling we came X place or we got accredited or whatever that may be. But again, it's to sort of use your communication sort of platforms across the year, and again, to use your leaders. So it may be that I know that sort of, you know, recently Woody's would talk about trust, or your leaders would basically articulate some of the great things that have been done, or the practice areas, or the actual sort of projects and initiatives. So you may want to do, you know, a 12-month series, and each month you focus on a practice area. You may have leaders talk about it, and you may have sort of individuals across your different sites. It may be culture teams, it might be people who participated in a project. And again, with technology, as Joanne was sort of talking about, it could be video. So you can do, like, we're working from home, selfie videos, sort of like knocking out selfie videos, like, you know, like there's no tomorrow. But again, it doesn't have to be, you know, it can be as comprehensive or, you know, easy to achieve, depending on your organization. And as I said, you know, it's just that doesn't have to happen, like, you know, in one sort of big burst. It can be sort of, you know, spread throughout the year. But again, I think it's really sort of important to sort of, you know, communicate and let people know why. You know, it's not just that we were ranked, it's like why we were ranked. What, you know, what's the progression, and really tell the story, as Colin said earlier, storytelling. You know, really sort of get into it and sort of, you know, use your platforms. Another kind of useful thing is environmental branding. And these might seem obvious, you know, and it goes from having a nice big sign in our site in Cork to, as Joanne pointed out, branding the washrooms, or, you know, sort of, you know, workstations. It could be putting up your trophies to the cabinet. I've sort of gone into a number of different sort of organizations, and when I push the door, you know, I go to Harvey Norman's at the weekend, I'm sort of walking in, I see Great Place to Work, L'Occitane in Dundrum, you know, Tesco's, I'm, you know, and for the Harvey Norman example, I'm walking in, I see the easel, I see it at the checkout. That tells me something about that organization that differentiates them versus other retailers. So, you know, you know, it may seem obvious, but I think sometimes you just have to sort of go out and do it. You know, and obviously Great Place to Work would have a kind of a store, and there's tons of different stuff that you can sort of, you know, buy. But again, I think it's really important to sort of, you know, be visual. And that's not just for your external sort of, you know, stakeholders. Internally, when you're walking by that, you're absorbing it. And it's that kind of, you know, comms mantra, you know, you need to see something 7 times before it actually begins to sort of sink in, and you're aware of it. Other things that do when it comes to sort of, you know, articulating and sort of, you know, communicating sort of internally is, over the past sort of number of years, we have, you know, shared our culture audit. So we have done our culture audit in a variety of different ways. In this instance here, this was a kind of a synthesis of our sort of, you know, culture audit that we would have had sort of placed across our various different sites. And if you can kind of see it, it was done in the die cut to have the kind of, to represent the various different cities, Cork, Dublin, sort of Sligo, and there were sort of 10 top stuff. So you could really sort of get in and get to the sort of the nub of why we're sort of a great place to work and why we're #1 that year. We've done it as newspapers, we've done sort of video, we've done, you know, the full sort of audit as well. And again, this reflects transparency. And again, it's how it's communicated. It's when we're doing these types of things, we're basically storytelling and telling the rationale why, telling our journey over time, you know. So again, it's year on year, so that people have a good understanding of why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and our sort of progression and sort of journey as well. And it's a sort of great opportunity for people who participate in those sort of projects to get involved and sort of, you know, contribute to it. Another nice one that we would have sort of done, and again, I talk about the actual sort of how our culture, how our sort of, our AbbVie culture reflects very well on what sort of Great Place to Work are doing as well in terms of sort of that sort of symbiosis. We would have done a piece last year called Culture as Our Constant. Again, it was talking about culture over time, how culture helps us to achieve business priorities. And as Joanne sort of points out, that the Great Place to Work journey and the process helps us to actually, achieve, our business objectives. It helps us to sort of make an impact in our communities. So it's not doing it for the sake of it. It's not just some kind of HR tool that's a nice to have. It has a very sort of fundamental sort of impact on our business, and helps us to actually sort of, achieve our strategic sort of business imperatives across our sites in Ireland. In this instance, we sort of, enable people, who were able to talk about like why, what makes AbbVie a great place to work? What are you proud of? That was the whole kind of, thing about what makes you proud, and again, after becoming the great place to, our number one sort of ranking, you have an awful lot of people who will sort of say that when I was at the GAA match and people were like, oh, geez, I heard that you were sort of number one. Like, that's fantastic. There's a sense of pride that goes with that. And for employees to be able to go out and be able to talk with pride about their sort of company is incredibly powerful. And it really sort of cuts through when it comes to messaging. And that kind of brings me on to this whole, when I talk about the actual sort of visible branding, you can see there the culture is a constant, sort of tabletops and the videos and all the stuff that we did with that. The actual Great Place to Work branding was very visible. We also did something sort of earlier a few years ago, sort of called the AbbVie in Ireland sort of narrative, to sort of enable people to talk with confidence about the company. I mentioned before that we were kind of a new company, born out of sort of Abbott, but we sort of recognized the imperative to basically allow our sort of employees to be able to talk about our sort of company to both internal and external sort of stakeholders. And I think it can be tricky, and I know Joanne as well, you sort of going, we're not the Economic and Social Research Institute, whereas you're getting into these sort of conversations and you're sitting at a wedding and you mightn't have seen somebody for a couple of years and they might go, so what are you doing now? I'm with a company sort of AbbVie, and we're, we do sort of anti-drug conjugates, and we do, and they're like, that's kind of over my head. I really, I don't really know much about sort of medicines and whatever. Okay, whereas you might say, well, did you know that we're sort of, Ireland's best place to work? So it's a very quick, like, oh. And I have a kind of a little sort of anecdote of someone sort of who joined our sort of company in the past week in the family WhatsApp group when they were sort of talking about, oh, AbbVie, I'm not really familiar with it. And then someone just basically did a link to an Irish Times article on AbbVie, and AbbVie being the number one place to work. And there was people like, oh my God, so suddenly it was, wow, that's fantastic. So again, the brand has cut through, people sort of get us very quickly. So I think it's a sort of, as I said, powerful and potent and quite useful to use.
Andy, I'm just going to jump in for 1 second, just on 2 points. The first is, so Jim Flynn is not a panelist today and yet has still managed to pick up the Cork reference. So even from the question floor, he's delighted to hear the Cork references. So honestly, I don't know what we're going to do about this Cork thing on these webinars. The other thing to say is we actually only have about 3 minutes left. So Andy, I know you've got a bit of the external piece. But I might have to ask you to fly through it. I know we're kind of caught onto the hours. So
yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah.
And what I said, I'll sort of flag some of the very simple things that, even to Joanne sort of, said earlier, and that is, simple things, your signature, it's probably the thing that you can do, when you go back to the office today, if you have 50 people in an organization, the thousands of people that can actually see this sort of Great Place to Work branding within a week. Another thing as well, as we sort of talk about sort of communicating sort of externally, immediately after you sort of get your award, your accreditation, and in terms of sort of leveraging that sort of like both locally, nationally. But again, I think, using like, the Chamber of Commerce, the Cork Chamber of Commerce, Dublin Chamber of Commerce, if it's Engineers Ireland, all the various different trade organizations, associations, that you're a part of. And we talked about sort of social as well. I think, obviously social is really, really powerful, and some organizations are incredibly adept at using sort of, Snapchats, LinkedIn, or a variety of other different sort of platforms and really use it. But again, I think it's important for everybody, on the night that we sort of went out, everybody using, their social platforms to sort of communicate in very different ways and be sort of authentic about it. again, another thing that we have sort of looked to do with our sort of website. For us, our website is a great sort of port of call for us for, you know, new talent and any stakeholders. They're sort of going on to our website immediately, right across our website. In our career section, our recognition section, our homepage, we have got Great Place to Work all over that. And it's also weaved into sort of, you know, video content, etc., that we have on the site. So again, I know it can be sort of, you know, difficult for people to do, but I think, you know, really use that sort of first port of call. Another thing, as I said, I pointed out in terms of, you know, the visibility and sort of any kind of advertisements. Yes, we've done a Great Place to Work sort of ad, but again, you know, recently we had a partnership with the sort of the Sligo Ladies GAA, and again, it's even using the Great Place to Work branding, putting it into the press release, and again, sort of articulating the fact that we're sort of a great place to work for women. So any times we're talking about sort of ED&I or any of those types of sort of, you know, subject matters, we will always sort of weave in not only the brand, but equally the fact that we're sort of a great place to work for women. So I think that's really sort of powerful. And again, when it comes to sort of, you know, social events throughout the year, you know, International sort of Women's Day, you know, work that we're doing when we're sort of engaging schools with STEM, etc. You know, it's important for us to talk about diversity, and then in terms of recognition sort of externally, that we've been sort of, you know, recognized by the Great Place to Work over the last sort of number of years. And then again, you know, I look at the actual sort of our subject slide, which I use today. Every time we're sort of going out, we're stamping, you know, Great Place to Work on any external sort of presentation that we do. And again, we sort of allude to it and talk about this sort of our Great Place to Work journey, because as I said, very quickly, it kind of conveys, you know, that you have a sort of a good culture, but also, you know, there's so many other things that are sort of weaved into that. So there we are.
Ooh, that was a whistle stop tour. I mean, there's so much. Joanne and Andy, thank you so much. There's so much shared across both of those. Cathal, I might hand over to you just to do a bit of a wrap up.
Yeah, so really, look, I'm conscious of time, so just to say thank you very much to Joanne and to Andrew. I think it's reinforced this idea of storytelling, right, and the importance of being able to storytell internally and externally. Stealing with pride, love that, and it's great to find out where the frame has gone, Andrew. So that's
there you go.
Yeah.
But hopefully ideas for people to take away today. So thanks everyone for joining us.
Brilliant. So thank you to all of our participants here with us today. I know we didn't get to your questions today, but we'll be following up on the Great Place to Work LinkedIn and all the rest. So we'll get them there. To Joe, to Andy, thank you both so much for your insight. Cathal, the ones for me were, so Joe, you have cracked the lack of crack. And the latest member of the Great Place to Work Met Office. I'm delighted to have had you both with us today. Thank you all so much for your time, and talk to everybody in a couple of weeks. That's great. Thanks so much,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. Take care. Bye.